This club does still exist, but we don't hear really much from it anymore. Then after the automation, we had the decline of the Eastern Bloc, the fall of the Soviet Union, the end of the Cold War, which made it possible to distribute labor work to cheaper locations. So companies started to relocate their work to cheaper work locations, something which is absolutely normal today. And hence they had to introduce connectivity to those remote operations. So it was the age of computer networks and then later of the internet. The internet, we should know, it was a lab test which did escape from the lab. It was limited to 3 years initially, but they couldn't terminate it anymore, because the three universities which did carry out the test, and the test was to develop a network which was resistant against nuclear strikes, so which would not go down at all if a part of it was hit. That was the research goal. So the university, rather than stopping it after 3 years, it was so successful, they did add other nodes, other companies, other universities, and that's the internet. It didn't evolve into the internet what we have today. Virtually everybody is networked through the internet. It was also the birth of the democratic standardization. In the early days and years of the internet, if you wanted to standardize something, you could write a request for comment describing what you want to standardize, and if you got 100 votes for you and you got at least 50% of the votes, it was a draft standard. And after 2-3 years, if enough people did implement it, it was a standard. For instance, 1982, the mail standard we still rely on today. The mail standard was written as request for comment number 821. That's probably the most famous standard in the internet. So till then, we had leading edge technologies. We had logarithms, we had steam engine, we had the slide rule, we had electricity, production management. Pardon me? Electronics, information technologies, and then of course computer networks, the internet, and this TCP/IP standard the internet is relying on. Where are we today? We are at the beginning of the industrial digitalization, the fourth industrial revolution. We had a discussion yesterday at DiMaP, and I did say we are definitely not at the end of the Industry 4.0. Huh? We are not even at the beginning of the end of Industry 4.0. We are maybe at the end of the beginning of Industry 4.0, free after Winston Churchill. So there's are many things to come, and we have just begun with this Industry 4.0. It was introduced by the German federal government in September 2014, when they formulated 6 priorities for the future tasks to promote prosperity and quality of life for the German nation and others, Europe. And the first point was Industry 4.0. Then there was smart services, smart data, cloud computing, etc., etc. And today, more or less, we summarize many of those topics below Industry 4.0. We subsumize them under 4.0. This digitalization did also bring new organizational concepts. The need of a continuity of the network, so it should be ubiquitous, it should be always available. Continuity and transparency of the information. Then automated assistance to offload mass activities of the people. Decentralized autonomy, that things can take actions by themselves. And last but definitely not least, decentralized trust, because if distributed parties want to communicate with each other without the central party organizing, you need decentralized trust. One concept of industrial digitalization was and is industrial IoT. It's growing and growing. We can map that. It's modeled after the Gartner reference model. We have an edge part with the things, with the devices on the left hand. On the right hand, we have the companies managing and maintaining the IoT environments, and in the middle you have an IoT platform which has to make sure that all data which is produced is ingested reliably, so you don't have any data loss, and then it's processed and handed over to the enterprise part. For that we have three needs. We need connectivity. So if we want to send data from the edge part, we need connectivity. Then in the cloud, we need bandwidth, because everything points to this IoT platform. And on the enterprise part, we need computing power, much more computing power than we did use in the past. Meanwhile, the computing power is also needed in the platform, and even the edge part is adding computing functions. So we have three scaling drivers. We have compute, connect, and cloud. And we have three laws. The first is probably the best known law. It's a Moore's law, which says the number of transistors in integrated circuits doubles every 12 or 18 or 24 months. It doesn't basically matter. It depends on the source. But it means that the number of transistors is still exponentially growing, and it continues to do so. There's no end foreseeable. So we can rely on added computing power. The second law is McAfee law, which says that the benefit of a network grows in square power to the number of subscribers, which means that after a certain number of subscribers, the benefit always exceeds the costs, because the costs go up linear and the benefit grows with power of 2. And the third, and this means that companies are willing to invest in networks. And the third is the internet bandwidth, which means, and it's an empiric model. We get 50% more bandwidth per year. And that's basically what our providers do. They don't raise the price. They don't lower the price. They could, but they don't want to, but they give us more bandwidth per year. At least if we ask them. Then with this added computing power, there is this new discipline, artificial intelligence. And yeah, forgive me for this probably exotic picture you see here. I think we can have a more realistic picture. What we have are different types of analytics. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, these are mystic terms describing very advanced analytics, so very advanced statistics. At the end, it's statistics and pattern matching. So we have five steps. We have descriptive analytics, which describes a state. If we measure something, we describe it, and we can choose if the status is okay or not okay. Then we have diagnostic analytics, where we can look back. We look into the back mirror, the history, and also we can say why a status is okay or not, especially because we look at the history. When we look forward, we talk about predictive analytics with prediction. We want to estimate. We want the systems have estimating what the status in the future will be, that we can prepare for it. And then when we are happy with the hit rate of the predictions, we go for prescriptive analytics, which adds recommendations to the predictions and tell us or tell the operators what they have to do. And at the end, if we trust the prescriptions, we talk about augmented analytics, something which the term is quite new. It did emerge 1 or 2 years ago. It's 2 years now. If we count this Corona year a year, which means we trust the prescription, we execute the prescriptions directly. And there are many different models and methodologies behind. It's machine learning, deep learning, reinforcement learning, assistant, trained, untrained learning, many different methodologies, but basically you execute one of those 5 analytics with AI. Well, I did say there is no end to see for the Moore's law. However, sometimes we will reach molecular size of the transistors, and there we expect that this will be the end of the classic microelectronics growth. And the next technology is already preparing. It's a quantum computing device. There are the mat is ready for that, and these quantum computers you will probably have access through the cloud with, because building a quantum computer costs roughly $1 billion. So it's quite expensive. Not many companies can afford that. There is also an approach to store many data. The technology DNA storage is emerging. There are prototypes already working where the 4 genomes are used to form a 4-based number and used to store hexadecimal data, which can represent everything on DNA. And for instance, there was a test to store the whole Wikipedia in the internet on DNA, and it did use more or less 1 square centimeter to store the whole Wikipedia. It's still slow, huh? But also there we have next steps which will eliminate expected limits. As a last point with the organizational concept, I did mention distributed trust. And the technology based, it's based on is very old and reliable and mature, is public key infrastructure. Though it's monopolized or oligopolized by a few companies generating certificates, but it's also the technology where blockchains and smart contracts are based on, a technology where you can make sure that what you send is received only by the person which is entitled to read it. It cannot be changed. It's not possible to change it anymore after having written. So it's a proof of evidence, and also it provides non-repudiation. So you cannot write it and then say no, I didn't write it. That was a bad measurement, for instance. We skip that. So that's the base of this distributed trust. Blockchain and smart contracts, all these stuff, they are often looked at a little bit like mystic. Huh? In fact, it's a very simple concept. It's much simpler than, for instance, the analytics are. When we make an outlook now, we have an impact on the labor market. Auswirkungen auf den Arbeitsmarkt should read impact of the labor market. And there's a study of Michael Osborne already almost 10 years ago, but there have been other studies which did underline that roughly 50% of the jobs will be rationalized. They will go away through efficiency improvements and rationalization, which means that the politics will have to find something to cope with that. Because I think if you have 50–60% unemployment, the term unemployment is not describing exactly what we are talking about. And the politics should better start now to think about that, how to cope that. Then we have another application emerging. It's not artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is the base of, but it's artificial excellence. You remember the book In Search of Excellence? And here we talk about computer systems, AI systems which provide artificial intelligence. IBM is developing a system since almost 10 years, the Project Debater, which can hold discussions with human beings on complex topics, and it can process extensive text, it can produce well-structured speech answers and questions, and it can lead discussion, can confirm and refuse arguments of the opponent, of the human opponent. And now the result is that if this can be done by a machine, evaluation of a project, why should a human being do that? That's one source where the 47%, so almost 50% of the job loss in the labor market comes from. I know many people say, yeah, we will have other jobs created beside of the jobs rationalized, but most probably they will not address the same people. So I'm always quiet when it comes to this question. So we can take that a little bit further. If we have the project expert, why can't we have an artificial decision maker? Why can't we have an artificial CFO? If we look at the CFO job, it's complex things, interdependencies he or she has to analyze. And many people think that an artificial intelligence systems can do that as well. It could evolve in a smart artificial assistant, and eventually it could replace the daily work of a CFO, of a COO, maybe of a CEO, and offload that work from their daily work, so they can resume to take on the quality and creative and business developing tasks. So we still can see that very positive. Another application is early warning systems or anomaly detection. It's everything resulting of this approach of artificial excellence. Even since IBM is working with almost a decade, we are still at the very beginning of this discipline. So, as we did say, what's next? It's 5.0. And many experts think that the next step in industrial revolution will be industrial collaboration. So we will have collaborative systems. The robots will become cobots, and the systems will predict the next expected actions of a human colleague, and they will call each other colleague. That's the big difference between 4.0 and 5.0. In 4.0, it's a slave, not a colleague. In 5.0, it should be positioned as a colleague. For automated preparation work, for automated reworking, and we'll also see individualization, also customization. People want to have personalized systems. As an example, we can see that a robot, or it can also be a system, doesn't have to be mechanical, first observes the human being and learns, then it analyzes the motions, the actions, then it trains itself to do those actions. So it's moving in parallel, and the human colleague, I really call it colleague, tells him, yeah, you are right, you are wrong, you have to change a little bit. Then it starts to pick up things. It knows that the human worker has to do, and then it brings things, it delivers things, and it becomes the colleague for heavy work. We are at the very beginning of these collaborative systems. Many salespeople of IT systems, they claim that they have this already, but of course, they have an idea of it, but we are far away from deep implementation of those concepts. The next step, many people, I do so too, will be artificial emotions. You can say, what should artificial emotions help? What should they be good for? But in fact, if two people, two colleagues in the future, be it a digital or a real colleague, they work together, many things are rational, but many things are emotional. Emotions are the glue of working together. So it makes absolutely sense to develop emotions for artificial colleagues. So it's growing, it's improving efficiency in the working together. And these movements did start already many years ago. There's a nice story of Professor Weizenbaum. He did write a small program called ELISA, and it's written in Lisp, a very old language. It's the language of my year of birth. And this program is asking questions, analyzing the question, the replies, and then asking questions again. Here you can see an example. That's really ELISA. And the funny story is that when he did watch a test person, a girl talking to ELISA, she asked him to leave the room. He said, why? I said, oh, it's private what I'm talking. You are not supposed to be here. And then he said, yeah, but I will probably download the dialogue to analyze ELISA. And they said, no, did you ever hear about data privacy? It's you are not supposed to get the data. It's private. And it was around, let me check, I think it was in the 60s when this was done. So it's 60 years ago. In 66, yes. And this girl and other people did develop emotional ties to this small little Lisp program. So this can happen much faster than we think. And maybe our culture is not ready for that, the Europe, but for instance, East Asia, the people are much more ready for that than we are. So we probably will see implementations first in the Eastern Asian room, and then it will come slowly to our area. One thing, and Turing did ask himself, is it possible to write a program? Is it possible to have a machine or a system behaving that it's indistinguishable from the behavior of a human being? And there have been many tests, and as far as I know, the test did pass. Maybe so. Turing did propose that 1950 already on a theoretical basis, and I think in the 80s or so there were systems which started to pass this Turing test. And you might know the movie Ex Machina. Basically, that's the story of the Turing test. The next step, I know this is a very provoking picture, is industrial integration. Let's drop that picture. Let's look at something which makes more direct sense. People with a weak skeleton can wear an exoskeleton. For instance, they can have the story did begin already a long time ago with hip joints injected. We can imagine smart hip joints in the future, and it's only the beginning. For instance, there is an annual security conference or hacker conference, you can say. It's a DEFCON and held in Las Vegas. More than 25,000 people. It's a conference of ethical hacking, and since 3 years there's a fixed chapter addressing biohacking and biosecurity, because with those enhancements we'll face new murder attack methods we have to be prepared for. So it will come slowly but surely, most probably. So, and of course, I would like to say, this is speculation. We do not know whether 5 or 6 or 7 or exactly come this type. More, we could say they do definitely not come exactly how I have described them, but they come maybe in a similar way, but we definitely don't know that they don't come. So it makes sense to think about before it's here. So we have core technologies and core skills. We'll most probably have a chief robotics officer in the future. We will have when we start to train emotions, the robots and the systems get the individual asset. They become an individual asset. So we'll, beside of the real human resource management, we'll probably have artificial human resource management to manage those assets. They are very precious. They are very they have a value. And then, of course, industrial integration. You could also say industrial human, but I don't like that. Say human augmentation. This did start a long time. Gene editing. We are at the beginning. Cyborg technology. We are at the beginning. There's more around that we know of. We know that there are war robots already, autonomous war robots. At the ultimate end would be this fiction of transhumans. Can it go further? It can't, because when we think this at the end, machines and humans come closer and closer and closer together. If they merge, if they just associate, it's not clear. But we cannot talk about pure Industrial Revolution 8.0 because this term Industrial Revolution will eventually not make any sense anymore. Maybe we have an 8.1, maybe the split of new functions is not as I did outline it here, but eventually the term Industrial Revolution will have its end of meaningfulness. And the next step, it's the Zukunftsinstitut of Germany. They did develop a fiction picture of the next 1,000 years. I leave it up to you to have fun with the more far points, but they claim we are in the information age with knowledge, with information, with communication, all that stuff, and it includes all these industrial revolutions we have talked about. And the next step will be the age of the health and experience, and it somehow makes sense that the 7.0 is the beginning of this health and experience age. So it doesn't mean that we are just complaining about the growing cost of health systems. We are not talking about the same health experience as we are today. We are talking about something beyond 7.0, which should improve. That's the plan here, which should improve the quality of our life beyond of anything we can imagine today. Yes, so this is a Gedankenexperiment to see how the future could look like. Again, it's speculation. We do not know exactly, but we do not know that it will not happen. So time after time, that's the main reason for this picture I take. It forces you to take two, 3 steps back, try to get the big picture, try to get another scale of time. When you think what's coming, it's not a quarter, it's not a year, it's not budget period, it's more 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. When we add 30 years, we we're at the decline of the information age and the rise of the health and experience age, and one of the main reasons is to unlink ourselves from the daily work and daily thresholds and daily contingencies we are living in this fast driving age we are in with this with the implementation of Industry 4.0. Okay, these have been my thoughts. Now I will check if we have questions. If this isn't the case, I wish everybody a very nice evening and a very nice weekend.